The Silent Miracle. A Child Who Felt Nothing. The delivery room was bathed in soft, amber light filtering through half-drawn blinds. Emma's heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the steady beeping of monitors and the gentle encouragements from the medical team surrounding her. After 12 exhausting hours of labor, she finally felt that overwhelming rush of relief as her body released its precious burden. Then came the silence, a silence that didn't belong in a delivery room. Emma's eyes flew open, her breath catching in her throat. She'd read all the books, watched countless videos. She knew what was supposed to happen next. That first piercing cry, that announcement of new life entering the world. But there was nothing, just an eerie, unsettling quiet. "My baby," she gasped, trying to lift herself up on trembling arms. "Why isn't he crying?" The midwife, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and capable hands, cradled a tiny pink form against her chest. The baby's eyes were wide open, alert and strangely calm, surveying his new surroundings with an almost uncanny curiosity. "Everything's perfect," the midwife assured her with a practiced smile. "Look at him, he's absolutely beautiful. Some babies don't cry right away. You've just got yourself a very peaceful little boy." They placed him on Emma's chest, and she felt the warmth of his small body against her skin. She traced her fingertips over the downy dark hair covering his head, marveling at how tiny he was. She'd decided to name him Oliver. He gazed up at her with striking blue-gray eyes that seemed far too peaceful, too serene for a newborn thrust suddenly into a cold, bright world. Emma tried to convince herself that the midwife was right, that everything was fine. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that something wasn't quite normal about her son's unnatural calm. The first days at home were disorienting in ways Emma hadn't anticipated. She and her husband Daniel had braced themselves for sleepless nights, endless crying, and the chaos that new parents universally complained about. They'd read every parenting book they could find, joined online forums, prepared themselves mentally and physically. But Oliver didn't cry, not ever. When he was hungry in the middle of the night, he would simply open his eyes and wait patiently in his crib. No screaming, no fussing, not even a whimper. Emma found herself setting alarms every 2 hours, creeping into the nursery to check if he was awake, placing her hand gently on his tiny chest just to confirm he was breathing and alive. Feeding times passed in an almost supernatural stillness. Oliver would nurse quietly, his small fingers clutching Emma's shirt, but he never made a sound, not a single gurgle or coo. "We really lucked out," Daniel would say, grinning as he prepared his morning coffee after a full night's sleep. "A baby who sleeps through the night and never cries? This is every parent's dream come true." Emma wanted to share his enthusiasm, tried to convince herself to be grateful. But the worry grew inside her like a shadow expanding in failing light, cold and insistent. At the pediatrician's office, she'd watch other babies wail in the waiting room, see them protest loudly when undressed for examinations, hear their outraged screams during vaccinations. Oliver remained perfectly still through everything. Even when the needle pierced his delicate skin for his shots, he barely flinched. He just watched the doctor with those calm, knowing eyes. "You have such an angel here," the pediatrician would say each visit. "Honestly, Mrs. Carter, you should count your blessings. Most parents would kill for a baby this easygoing." But Emma couldn't feel blessed. She couldn't shake the growing unease that something was fundamentally wrong. Oliver was 4 months old when the incident happened that changed everything. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Emma had placed him on his playmat while she prepared lunch, humming softly to herself as she chopped vegetables. She glanced over regularly, watching him study the colorful toys dangling above him with that intense, focused gaze that was so characteristically him. Then she heard a soft thud. Turning quickly, Emma saw that Oliver had managed to roll over for the first time, a milestone she should have been celebrating. But his tiny hand was trapped beneath his body at an unnatural angle. His fingers bent backward in a way that made her stomach lurch. "Oh God, Oliver!" She rushed over and carefully turned him, her hands shaking. What she saw made her blood run cold. 2 of his little fingers were bent completely the wrong way, clearly caught and twisted when he'd rolled. It had to be excruciating. Any other baby would be screaming in agony. But Oliver just looked at her calmly. No tears, no crying. His expression hadn't changed at all. He didn't even seem uncomfortable. "Oliver, baby, does it hurt?" Her voice cracked as she gently freed his fingers, examining them frantically for signs of fracture. They were red and slightly swollen, certainly injured. But he showed no reaction whatsoever. She scooped him up, held him close, rocked him, but still no tears came. That was the moment Emma knew. The terrible truth crashed over her like an icy wave. Her son couldn't feel pain. The next morning, Emma sat in Dr. Morrison's examination room with Oliver cradled in her arms. She'd insisted on an emergency appointment, refusing to take no for an answer despite the receptionist's resistance. Daniel sat beside her, looking worried but also somewhat skeptical. "Maybe you're overthinking this, Em," he'd suggested on the drive over. "Babies are tougher than we think. Maybe his fingers weren't hurt as badly as they looked." But Emma knew. She knew with absolute certainty that something was terribly wrong. Dr. Morrison, an experienced pediatrician with graying hair and gentle hands, examined Oliver thoroughly. He pinched his skin lightly, tested his reflexes, observed his responses to various stimuli. Each test yielded the same result: nothing. No reaction to discomfort or pain whatsoever. The doctor's expression grew increasingly grave. He asked his nurse to contact a pediatric neurologist immediately. Emma felt her palms grow clammy. Daniel moved closer and took her hand, his grip tight. "What's wrong with him, doctor?" Emma asked, her voice breaking on the last word. Dr. Morrison took a deep breath before answering, choosing his words carefully. "I believe your son has an extremely rare condition called congenital insensitivity to pain. It's a genetic disorder that affects the nervous system and prevents pain signals from reaching the brain." The room seemed to tilt. Emma heard the words but couldn't process them. No pain. Her baby couldn't feel pain? "But is that serious?" Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's complicated," the doctor replied gently. "Pain is actually a vital defense mechanism. It alerts us when something's wrong with our bodies. Without it, a minor injury can become catastrophic because it goes unnoticed and untreated." The following weeks were the darkest of Emma's life. Test after test confirmed the diagnosis. Oliver had congenital insensitivity to pain, a condition so rare it affected fewer than 1 person in 1,000,000 worldwide. The specialists painted a terrifying picture of what this meant. Oliver could touch a hot stove and leave his hand there until it burned down to the bone. He could bite through his own tongue. He could break a leg and keep walking on it. A simple infected tooth could become life-threatening if no one noticed it in time. "You'll have to become his early warning system," the neurologist told her during one consultation. You'll need to examine his body daily, check for injuries, monitor his temperature constantly, watch his behavior for any changes. The smallest thing could indicate a serious problem. Emma would come home from these appointments exhausted and hollow, crying silently at night while Daniel and Oliver slept. The fear was constant, a living thing that coiled around her heart and squeezed. How could she possibly protect her child from an entire world of invisible dangers? But amid the storm, something unexpected happened. Emma discovered a strength within herself she'd never known existed. Her love for Oliver transcended her fear. She decided she would do whatever it took, absolutely anything, to give him the best life possible. She transformed their home into a sanctuary. Every sharp corner was padded. Water temperatures were measured precisely. Electrical outlets were secured and covered. She bought an infrared thermometer to check Oliver's temperature throughout the day. Each evening after his bath, she examined every inch of his body, searching for cuts, bruises, redness, any sign of injury. She kept a detailed journal, noting every observation, no matter how minor. She found an online support group for parents of children with rare diseases. There, she found comfort among people who truly understood what she was going through. She wasn't alone. Oliver grew. At 6 months, he smiled frequently, a radiant smile that lit up his entire face. At 9 months, he began to crawl, and Emma's vigilance intensified. At 12 months, he took his first wobbly steps, and she understood that life would only become more challenging. But she was ready. She'd learned to read her son in a unique way. She could recognize subtle changes in his behavior that might indicate a problem. A slight alteration in how he moved could signal an injury. A lack of appetite might mean illness. Daniel had adapted too. Initially overwhelmed, he'd become a solid, present partner. Together, they formed a team, united by one goal: allowing their son to live fully despite his condition. Oliver's second birthday was approaching. Emma planned a small celebration in their backyard with a few close friends and family who understood the situation and knew to be watchful. She watched her son play with his toys, captivated by his simple, pure joy. Oliver didn't yet understand his difference. To him, the world was a wonderful playground waiting to be explored. He laughed, babbled, chased their neighbor's cat with unsteady steps. He was happy, genuinely, completely happy. Emma knew challenges awaited them. One day, she'd have to explain to Oliver what made him different. She'd have to teach him to protect himself, to recognize the warning signs his body couldn't send him. School would be an immense challenge. Adolescence, with all its dangers, would be a constant source of anxiety. But right now, in this moment, she chose simply to be present, to look at her son with love, to celebrate every small victory, every day without incident, every smile. Because despite everything, despite the sleepless nights, the constant fear, the endless medical appointments, Oliver was her greatest joy. His condition didn't define who he was. He was a curious, affectionate little boy, full of life and wonder. And Emma had discovered something essential. A mother's love knows no bounds. That love gave her the strength to bear the unbearable, to transform her fear into protective vigilance, her despair into determination. She walked over to Oliver and lifted him into her arms. He wrapped his small arms around her neck and rested his head on her shoulder. In that simple gesture was all the love in the world. "I'll always be here for you, sweetheart," she whispered against his hair. "Always." And it was a promise she would keep, no matter what came next. Emma and Oliver's story reminds us that life can confront us with challenges we never imagined. Congenital insensitivity to pain is a real condition, extraordinarily rare, affecting fewer than 1 person in a million worldwide. This story teaches us something profound. Parental love has no limits. Facing the most insurmountable obstacles, parents like Emma and Daniel find extraordinary strength within themselves to protect and guide their children. If this story touched you, take a moment to think about all the families living with rare diseases. They fight a silent battle every day, often misunderstood by the outside world. Your compassion and awareness can make a difference. Please share this story to raise awareness about rare diseases. Leave a comment with your thoughts and subscribe to see more stories celebrating the strength of the human spirit. Remember, every child, regardless of their differences, deserves to be loved, protected, and encouraged to live life fully. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Until next time.